Hello, everyone. This is Ted with Jibe Talking. We are broadcasting today from Jolly Roger Sailing Club, where pirates go to play. We're going to try to work that in here. We'll see how it goes. Today we are on the sunny shores of the Ottawa River. I can see the palm trees right now swaying. I saw a couple dolphins jumping.
You have a vivid
water.
Imagination.
Yeah, that or the...
You're not in Ohio.
Oh,
You're not in Ohio.
Yeah. Well, that is true. No, actually, the river is starting to freeze over today. I don't know when we'll actually air this, but probably going to be closer to the Mills race. But anyways, I'm going to ask all you guys kind of the same question: is how many times have each of you participated in the Mills race? You can give me an approximate.
Betty's 4.
4 times.
I really don't have any idea. I have a hat that I have gotten a patch after every Mills race that we've raced.
Okay.
And I've got a hat that's full of patches and a drawer full of other ones. So I would guess. What would you say? Guess 30, 40 times maybe?
I don't
50?
think that many. I'd say,
Well,
20,
not only
25.
racing our boats, but sailing
Well, we
with
crewed
somebody.
you've done it more than I have. So
I don't know, lots of times.
25, 30
Okay.
times maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I should have started. Since I know these people, I didn't do the obvious thing as everybody here can't see them. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves. So go ahead. We'll start with you, Judy.
Okay, I'm Judy Owens. My husband and I have been members of Jolly Roger since probably 1986 or 87. Been involved with the club quite a bit of involvement over those years.
Yeah, we're joint members at North Cape in here for maybe 10 years.
We were.
By the way, hello everybody. I'm Bill Owens.
Bill, we know you, Bill.
Captain Bill.
You're married to Judy, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Betty Mann Warren, and my husband and I joined in 1987. We had a Cal 29-foot sailboat,
Okay.
and we had that and sailed for 30 years with it.
Now, you said you've been in the Mills 4 times.
Yes.
And Bill, you said over 20, 25 times.
Yes.
Now, how many times have you won it, Bill? Come on, brag.
Twice.
Brag.
Twice.
Ooh. Is that the time that there was 2 boats in the race? Or
No. Matter of fact, the first time we won it, we
Cruising
won by.
class.
Well, this was sailed in cruising class.
Mm-hmm.
I've raced it many times in our 25, and that we either dropped out or didn't place high enough to. But the 2 cruising class years, we won it by corrected time. Corrected time, I think, was like 30 seconds, 15 to 30 seconds corrected. And then the next year, I think it was maybe a minute and a half corrected.
Why don't you mentioned cruising class, and anybody, we probably have 4 people that maybe are listening today, but for some, why don't you explain to us, like, what are the different classes? How do they, because they have different race links too, if I'm not mistaken, right?
They have a jib and main class and they have a perf class. The difference is perf is you can use spinnakers, and jib and main is that, jib and main. And there are normally so many boats that are racing for this. By the way, if you don't know what the Mills is an overnight, I like to call it an overnight navigational race, basically, because they start boats so anywhere from 5:30 to 6 p.m. or something, and depending on their course, or depending on their race course, they might go north, they might go east, depending on what class they're in. But I can remember as many as 250 boats in the total in the Mills, and
I think so.
if not more, a lot of boats. So they may have 8 classes of jam boats, if there are that many, jib and main boats, if there are that many, and usually there'll be what do you want to call them, heats or something like that, but there will be 8 to 10 12 boats maybe in that class or in that heat, and they will call it Jibe Main B and Jibe Main C, and so on and so forth. And then they have a cruising class, which generally are not, supposedly, it's not supposed to be racers. It's people that just want to get out and do that and race the mills and so forth.
And maybe their boat is not as race competitive.
Right.
I want to say it's more, even like our boat, it was cruising boat, and we just chose to race in the mills race. So
you could actually, I know guys that love to race, and I tell you, at the beginning of the year, you're not, or when they race through, you're not allowed to take a thermos of cold water or a freezer, or not a
Cooler
freezer,
of
but
ice.
a cooler of ice on board, because it weighs too much. So the lighter the boat is, the faster it'll go. Well, when we put our boat in the spring, we would start getting it ready to sail, and if slowly the water line would start disappearing as we got all the stuff on it. I used to kid my wife that all the stuff we've got on board, but it was because it was things. And then when we got rid of that boat, when we sold it, we took like 2 or 3 pickup truckloads of stuff off the boat, like frying pans and that we never used, and
a
so on.
TV and a microwave.
TV and a microwave and all this other
That's
stuff
what
we
we
had on
raced
board.
with.
And yeah, that's what we raced with. So it added a little more weight to it. So we raced cruising class. But we have attempted to race in the other classes. We just were never competitive.
So, what would you say the longest and the shortest time it took you to complete the mills?
I would guess maybe the longest time is probably still open because we never finished.
I hope the boat's still not out there waiting for you.
Well, no, because either we'd lose wind and the crew revolted, wanted to end the race or something like that, so we dropped out. But I'm thinking probably between 4 and 5 hours on the short end.
Okay, that's pretty fast to go across there.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
No, I'm not saying you're not right. I'm just saying that's pretty fast to go across there.
Yeah. I remember one funny story. Well, we don't like do. Are we ready for funny stories?
You do whatever you want.
I just was hoping I answered your question. But I think probably 4 and a half.
Well, what would you
5
say the
hours.
longest then you completed it?
Oh, maybe starting at 6 or 7 o'clock on a Friday night and finishing maybe 11:30 or 12:45, something like that, the next morning.
Ooh,
the
that
next
is
day,
long.
meaning at around lunchtime or
Yeah.
something.
Well, we crewed with somebody one time, obviously not our boat, we crewed with somebody, and our start was like, 6, 7 o'clock Friday night, and when the sun came up the next morning, we were behind South Bass Island still trying to finish the race. So
Frosty's is full by then. You're in trouble.
Yeah. We sailed one year with on a Catalina 27, Bob and Debbie Jones,
Yeah.
I remember, and there was another past Commodore on board who shall remain nameless, but the poor guy was seasick all night, and I can remember on the leg going down to Cedar Point, where we had to make the mark at Cedar Point Light and come back up to the bay to finish. We were just headed down to Cedar Point, and the wind was back and so on. And of course, the sun was just coming up in the east, and here coming out of the northeast were all the big, faster spinnaker boats that were coming out of had gone up to. I can't remember around. Or what? Do you remember what were the name of the
Kelly's Island.
hen and chickens and way out east and
it's
so on? But
Colchester Reef kind of.
Colchester, yeah, up around the Colchester Reef, and so forth. But you'd see these boats coming with the sun coming up behind them, and it was just one of those memorable moments. And all of a sudden, the sereneness, if that's a word, the sereneness of the moment was broken by this guy, getting sick overboard again. And that was like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning. And we finished that day about 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, and he walked off the boat, and his wife was there to meet him, and he left.
Now, when I was looking online about the information about the mills, I saw that there's like a President's Cup, a Governor's Cup. What are all those different things? Do you know?
Different courses.
For the bigger boats, probably.
Different classes of boats,
Okay,
and so on
okay.
and so forth, yeah.
Now, I know that this year, 2023, they said is the 99th running of the mills. Now, I also read that it wasn't always held at night. Have you ever raced it during the day?
Never
No.
have. Never might.
Do you know, Betty?
No, don't know
Because
anything.
they said at one time it was not a night race.
Never. I don't
Not in
remember
our
that.
recollection.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not mine either. No.
So when you show up, okay, it's race time. I'm gonna get to your funny story in a second, and then we got to get Judy's got a nice mill story too. When you show up for the race, okay, now this is for people who've never been in a race, and I'm gonna include myself because when I go with Phil, I stay up on the I'm the rail meat, and he just sends me food, and I don't really always know what's going on in the cockpit. But so, do they hand you a set of coordinates? Like they hand you a sheet, and then I mean, how does that work?
Well, when you register for the race, first of all, you're supposed to have your boat measured so they know you're not trying to pull anything.
For the ratings, right?
And they'll check the rating, and then you register for whatever class you fit into, and then they give you a set of race instructions, which will tell you what mark has to be taken to port, what mark has to be taken to starboard, and so on and so forth. And from that point on, you can get from point A to point B any way you want.
But they give you the long. They give you what 31 degrees, 50 minutes. I mean, they give
they
you.
give you the location. They
Okay.
give you the location of the
Now, is
mark.
that lit when you go to that marker?
Oh, no.
No?
Not always, depending what the marker was. Sometimes there'd be a blinking light on the marker, sometimes not. Like Niagara Reef always had a green can with
Right.
a light flashing on the top of it. Well, that was a mark one night, or in the cruising class that night. We had to stay north of that mark.
Okay.
So
One of the things Bill kind of alluded to is he talked about your boat rating and he talked about time. What they do is they can, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but based on your boat, they might add or subtract time to you. That way, somebody maybe, like I have a 27-foot Catalina and I could race against somebody in a bigger boat, but they would adjust my time accordingly. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And so
Yep.
I know you have to get your sails measured or something, right? Isn't that there's somebody that comes out and measures everything, and then you're given a rating?
Usually you get them measured anywhere, and perf will sign off on that measurement if
Okay.
it's a measure, and then you can take that certificate in.
Okay. So then they give you the coordinates. Now, are you allowed to navigate with? Now I use Navionics, or does it have to just be a compass, or what? What are the rules on that?
I think whatever. When years ago we used our GPS.
Yeah.
Okay, so
you can use
GPS is
instruments.
permitted.
Before GPS, there was
Before
Loran.
GPS, there was
and,
Loran.
We used Loran for years, and then we went to a GPS, and there was a guy from our club. His name was Bob Badman. He's passed away now, but this guy was born on the lake and just an amazing sailor. I mean, he could, but you would, the entire fleet would be going one way, and Bob would take off and go another way, and he'd be, going off by himself. And the guy won a lot. Remember Bob? So yeah,
He could make his Catalina 27 move.
yeah.
Now the Mills has been, I would say, what would you say, one of the premier races on this end of the lake? One of the big races.
Oh, I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
a lot of your other other clubs in Detroit, for instance, Ford will have a night race, and some of the other races, yacht clubs, bigger clubs up around Detroit have some other races as
Okay.
well. But as far as this end of the lake, I think at least around in here, the Mills has probably got the tradition and got the history. And
it's not just from our club that racing
That's a great
this.
point.
Yeah.
It's
Oh yeah,
from
we get
all lot
boats
of,
from
lot
Detroit,
of
Cleveland,
others.
and parts in between.
Yeah, right.
So then you got this mark. Is there a way they actually know if these people round these marks, or is it an honor system?
Usually when you finish, you turn in a sheet saying what was the sail number of the boat ahead of you and the sail number of the boat behind you. A lot of times you might round a mark and not see any boats, not have any boats near you, but sometimes you're in two or three, or with two or three or four. And one year we were sailing a boat that we later owned. We were sailing a Tycon 30, and I was on the helm. We came up, and we were really having trouble keeping the boat going. I mean, but there was a 42 footer that was ahead of us, and another big boat that even looked bigger than that behind us. And there were three of us that were coming. We were to the mark at the north end of the South Bass, and just all of a sudden we got the air. The air was coming from over the islands, and we got far enough past the islands that the air started to reach us, because our 30-foot boat, the mast wasn't as high as the other two we were racing against. But this Tycon also drew just about 6 foot of water. It was a great boat, a great racing boat as well. And we started to pick up ground on this guy, and I was able to get underneath him, meaning the mark is, say, here, he's here, and I'm below, and the wind's coming from this way. I was able to get underneath him. In other words, between him as we approached the mark, there's a rule you could call for room at the mark. And if I have overlap on him, then he had to extend his leg far enough out so I could get around the mark, more or less ahead of him or underneath him. And so I called for room at the mark, and we came on the weather, and this boat just literally, we kidded the owner that night. It was just like a lady of the sea had picked up her skirt and ran away from these boats with bigger water lines, and it was just amazing. Just one of those things that once you experience that, you'll want to race every damn Mills from then on.
So now when you go overnight, does everyone try to stay up all night? Do you try to take a little nap? Do you how does all that work?
It depends upon the people that's working on the boat. Sometimes they'll say, okay, I'll take the first watch and take a nap, and then the next person will take time at the helm. So it depends upon the boat also and the people that's involved, whether anybody takes a nap.
Right. Some people choose to stay up all night.
Yeah.
It's just, whatever works for your crew.
Yeah.
I can only remember one time, I think, that on any of the boats that I ever sailed, that I took a nap. I remember we lost air between East Sister and coming down on Green Island, and so we lost the air, and so we had the spinnaker up, but it just didn't want to go anywhere. We just weren't getting any air, so I went below and laid down, and his friend Nick Smith took over and woke up, and by morning we had drifted all the way over north of I'd say North Bass somewhere, which was still roughly on the ley line, and it was still roughly in the direction we wanted to go. And all of a sudden, the movement of the boat and so forth kind of woke me up, and here we were whizzing along under spinnaker. And so, luckily Nick knew what he was doing, and away we went. But
Okay, you had a story. Go ahead. Tell me the story you were going to tell me.
I don't remember which story.
All right, how about you, Judy? I was told there was a Mills story you had to tell.
The one I had to tell must
Yes.
have been the one about the weather that, oh my goodness. We were in our 25-foot Catalina. we had two other people on board, two other guys on board. And when we started the race, there was no wind. I mean, the boats were practically fending off each
We
other.
were all sitting along the railing with our feet out, holding the other boats off.
Yeah,
of it,
trying to.
no steerage, no.
Yeah. So we take the start and we're headed. I think the course was around Middle Sister and then back down towards South Bass. And so as we were headed towards Middle Sister, I think the wind started building. Now, when we started, it's still light out. Okay. So as the sun goes down, the wind is building and building and building.
Good
And
strong
again,
breeze
we
right out of
had
the south.
and we had a spinnaker up,
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
and we were right in the thick of it with two Catalina 27s who both owed us time. So we're watching the wind build, and we're watching the wind build, and pretty soon I'm looking at the situation now. Every time we flew a spinnaker, my mouth would get dry because spinnakers make me nervous. But anyway, so spinnakers sheets to the aft of the boat. So when you start getting these puffs of wind, it can tend to make the back of the boat feel like it's going from side to side.
Because it's sheeted after the
'Cause
center
it's
of
after
gravity.
the center of
The center of
gravity.
gravity's
So-
coming through the helm or the keel.
So when that started happening, I'm getting a little nervous and I'm saying, Bill, I think we need to take the spinnaker down. No. He's going, no, we're fine, because those boats owed us time. So technically, we were almost in first place at that point. So little time goes by, and the boats. He's got three of us sitting on the rail in the back to hold the back of the boat down, so it's still doing its number, going a little back and forth. I said, Bill, it's time to take the spinnaker down. No, we're fine. So a little more time goes by, and the third time, I will say that I threatened to cut it away with a knife if he didn't take it down. Because,
Getting a little sassy.
well, because I was concerned, and we had a swing keel 25 that did not have a lockdown bolt. If we got pulled over into a broach, which is where the spinnaker's pulling the boat through the water and filling up the boat, basically, I didn't want 1,500 pounds of keel coming back up through the bottom of that boat. I was a little nervous. So
And the other thing, the Catalina 25 had an outboard rudder, which really was a lot of, probably the heaviest stress part of that boat was right on that rudder at the water line, and yeah, she was right. I should have taken it down.
Well,
but-
anyway, we got the spinnaker down, and not 5 minutes after we got the spinnaker down,
or less.
the two boats in front of us still had their spinnakers up. Both of them broached. One of them twice, one of them 3 times.
Oh.
Up, down, side to side. Yeah. One of them we talked to later, they had 3 feet of water in their cabin
Oh, wow.
because of that. So, and they were 27s with a fixed keel.
He made up a lot of time then.
Well, technically that night it just kept building and building, and it was crazy out there. And that's the thing. Like I've said, Bill always told me it's not if you're going to get caught, it's when. We didn't finish that race that night. There were other things. I mean, our boat was fine. Our boat was sound.
We really only got maybe a half a cup or so of water in the boat below. I mean, in the deck. But
Yeah, we ended up.
was
not-
that the night that the 14-foot waves were out there?
Yes.
Well, so as they build it, turned in. There were probably, and they always look bigger when you're there, but I would say there were at least 12 and 14-foot waves rolling, and it was a broad reach. It was coming from over our right stern quarter, and we had a double reef in the main, and even our jib was double reefed.
My hands are sweating right now. 12-foot waves.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
Well,
And it was amazing because you see on these movies and stuff where these big, how a wave will froth over and roll and kind of, well, you see, you look up and you'd be and standing in the cockpit and look up and you'd see nothing but this big frothy wave rolling right into the cockpit. And it did literally roll right in. We were standing, the cockpit was knee deep. We were knee deep in water that night. We had a man overboard buoy, or right on the to the side of the stern rail, and Tony, one of the guys the guy that introduced Judy and I, as a matter of fact, was there, and he said he felt like he was standing in a bidet because the water would just come right over him and flow right out the bottom into
Up one pant leg and out the
down
other.
the other. But the scuppers, or the drains in the cockpit, were probably like this. He had two of them, and the cockpit drained right away. So I mean, that was not a problem. But just all night, and the thing in particular I remember, and you have a 27, so
I do.
You might, and we were in a 25. Okay, so but the wind was blowing so hard that the sheet line on the windward side of the boat, or in other words, the side of the boat the wind was coming from, we had a stopper knot in it so it wouldn't go through the block. And that's the pulley, if anybody doesn't know, that. Well, at any rate, we got one gust one time that this whole sheet line and everything, the stopper knot, just went right through the block, went around and wound itself around the pressure side of it. In other words, on the other side of the boat where the sheet was still connected to the boat,
To the sail.
to the sail, and of course we were heeled over. So I knew we were coming down on
South Bass.
on South Bass Island and so forth, and pretty soon we'd have to tack. Well, we couldn't tack back the other way because the sheet line was wrapped around the. So I remember laying across the top of the cabin, laying down, probably trying to up to my shoulders or knees anyway, not knees, shoulders, trying to unwrap the sheet line around and untangle it. And I remember looking down through the cabin windows through water, and there she was down below, laying down on the floor of the boat. I could see her through the window, through the wire, down on the bottom. So how far over we were. And we finally got it straightened away and so forth, and dropped out that night. But
Well, we decided to drop out with that wind because we'd have had to go to weather the whole backside of South Bass Island, and that was not going to happen in our
With
boat.
14-foot waves.
Well, yeah.
And-
So we're not doing that.
and the 25
Well, like
was
we said, they look kind of bigger when you're out there in them, but they were huge.
Especially at night.
At night. There were huge waves out there.
Yeah, the largest I've ever seen, and I've been on this lake since I was carried aboard a boat, and these are the largest waves I've ever seen.
Anyway, with that said, everybody has sailing stories, but the real fun part is obviously, and I'm going to tell this story about Bob that was on board with us that night. He sailed a Catalina 25. He had a Catalina 25 that docked next to us on Jolly Roger docks. Anyway, we couldn't pry him off the helm that night because that was where his comfort zone was, and he steered that boat like a champ. We get into the dock, and of course we've got wet sails. We've got it didn't rain, but just all that
Yeah,
the wave
sure, all the
action,
waves,
and
yeah.
the lines were all wet. Stuff was everywhere. And so Bill said, "Let's put the boat away." And God bless Bob. He finally he was sitting in the cockpit, and he said, "I need a Captain Morgan, and I need it now." So
Sometimes you just know, right?
sometimes you got to just relax. And so Bill poured him a Captain Morgan, and he drank it down, and then Bill says,
I
"Okay,
gave
well."
him a beer cup that was probably half to 3/4 full of rum, and just topped it off with just a tan of Coke. And
So-
said, "I need another drink, and I need it now." He said,
And God love him. He had 2 drinks. We put the boat away after he got
now we
done.
can put the boat
now
away.
we can put the boat away.
Now, I heard rumor that when you get to the other end, there's a nice party. Is
There
the
is.
Mills party nice?
Yeah.
The next day, and probably in the afternoon,
Yeah,
they have
sales rewards.
the award, do the awards, and
race
they have
awards.
Yep, it's a nice party.
I think they have that at Put-in Bay Yacht Club now. Is that where it is? The awards? I know that's where they have the Bay Week one.
I think, well, I personally haven't sailed the mills in quite a while, but the party used to be in the park, where the carousel is and
Yes.
the crescent and all that.
Yes.
Back in that area, back in there is where
Okay.
they'd have a tent up,
Yeah, have a big tent.
and that's where everybody would gather.
What would you say to a new person? They wanted to race the mills for the first time. What would be your advice?
Sail with somebody that's raced it
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
What's the biggest mistake you see new sailors make?
Not-
In the mills.
Not be prepared for what might happen.
That's just what I was going to say. Make sure
Interesting.
you're not making sure your boat or your equipment works or is put together and you've thought it through. That's right.
Like I
And
said,
sail life jackets for everyone. And at this point, usually the sailors that come with you, if they've sailed before, we all have basically our own vest, life vest.
Yes. Would you say that there's a person in this area who you would say would be the living mills legend?
Well, from our area here, there's plenty. I mean, John Greiner is
I was going to say John
there's
Greiner.
I've
probably
heard
one
that.
guy that but John is not by far is not the only guy that
Jim Davis.
Jim
Yeah,
Davis
Jim
is another
Davis.
guy. He's a member
Yeah,
of our club.
Jim Davis.
Okay.
Jim Davis is probably matter of fact. Jim Davis's boat won boat of the year, several times.
What,
And he had a Cal 29.
Bill Pryby. He's another one that is a Jolly Roger member and a North Cape member.
I met Bill at the ILYA. Is it ILY? I always want to say ILYC, but I know it's AYC. But I met him there. He's a nice man. Yeah.
Who else was like it? Matt Kern has sailed
Matt
a
Kern,
number, a lot of number. He's got a competitive boat. There's a lot of Jolly Roger members here
Yeah.
that have sailed the mills. Well, our own Commodore has sailed the mills
Yes.
for a lot of years.
Yes. Yes. Phil. She's speaking of Phil Fry right now.
Yeah.
Betty, tell us a Mills story that you would have. We're gonna end on a Mills story from Betty.
Well, I sailed 4 times. Once was in Ed and my boat, the two of us, was the year that he was Commodore, 2003, and he felt like that we should do this. So we always sailed, well, I say always, but maybe not. I don't know for sure if we sailed the Jibe, Maine, or if we sailed the cruise. I probably think we sailed the cruise fleet. And I really don't have any bad stories about that. We started and we finished, and I don't know if we got first. It seems like we did, but I don't remember for sure because our boat was a very good competitive boat. The other 3 times that I was on, but my husband sailed with different people also. But the 3 that I sailed with Ed and was on Rick Huff's boat. And one time when we started and then the wind died or some whatever, the first mark was up by Monroe Channel, and we went around that, we don't know how many times, but when the sun arose, we were still there.
Just like going around in a circle, or you were lost, or what was the deal?
Probably no wind.
Oh, okay.
And then another time, we made it that way, and we were going on, and then our lights wouldn't work anymore.
Ooh, that's not good.
Rick had a good boat, and I can't remember what he had,
Is it a
but
Morgan?
anyways, yeah, Morgan something. Anyhow, he had everything on it to live, refrigerator, and he had something in a crock pot cooking while he was. And
That's my
well,
kind of
make it
sailing.
short, we ran out of juice, so he did what he had to do to let him know that we were out of the race, and we then just sailed right straight on to
And got into the crock
got
pot
into Put-in Bay, and robbed a dock that was out, so they had no motor to maneuver, and then Jim Davis, Rick got a hold of Jim Davis, and Jim Davis came over and lended us his battery so that we could get into a dock, and then Rick got the his battery charged, and
What did you have in the crock pot?
I don't remember.
Oh man.
I remember.
Probably a stew of some
Oh,
sort.
I love
It was
stew.
if you sailed with Rick Huff, there was always something going below, and usually he'd take so much electricity running his crock pots and stuff that his batteries would run his batteries down.
Anyway, also with his wife Pat.
Yeah.
Pat Huff.
Okay.
I
Okay.
still communicate with her. But
Okay.
this year I had COVID and I didn't get sick.
Yeah.
I get Christmas cards wrote out.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you're okay now. I know COVID affected, and I think of almost everybody in the club here at some to some
I remember
degree.
one thing too that I forgot to mention is the first year that we won that cruising class, and we came back the second year, and there was a storm out there the second year, and
Yeah.
and another member of the club, Bud Aussie, had a 42 foot, 41, 39 foot, something big.
I think that's 41.
Yeah, big came zooming, and he finally got the win, got the boat organized and so forth, and we were just about at I don't know, I know where we were, but it's not important. But at any rate, here comes Bud up through the fleet, just with his big bow weight coming, because he was really covered in ground. And then the storm came, and I don't know what happened on his boat, and during the storm, but so he had passed us, and we were in first. He had passed us, and we passed him back, and won the race. But the second year, usually, they will add, if you win back to back in that class, they'll add like 10% to your ratings, so it makes it harder to win the second year. Well, the second year we'd won by Lynn, like I think 15 seconds was
I
it
think
corrected
so.
or something like that. And so we were getting ready to race it the third year, and I remember they had paid had paid. I remember this really well because I'm thinking at that point the entering fee, the fee to enter was like $250, and or maybe it was like 125. I don't know, but I wasn't sure the third year if we were going to have the money or not, or if I wanted to spend the money. We had other things happening in our lives and so on. But I had the boat ready. The boat was going to be ready should we decide. Well, then I had to register late, and so it cost me $250. I think is what the deal was to register late. And then I don't know, a day or two before the race, I was on the boat just double checking everything. And I bent down to check the aft stay, and my tendon or something in my back went.
Oh.
And I remember that?
I do remember
and,
that.
And I dropped to the deck and could hardly even move for about a half hour. And then I finally, staggered downstairs. But so we never got to race it the third year. But at any rate.
Well, I want to thank you guys for coming out, and you guys had some pretty cool stories. I hope everybody else listening can appreciate that. So thanks.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.